It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulson and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
In three. Oh,
hang on.
Oh,
did you just get unplugged? Yes, hang on.
Take command after dark.
Hang on. My big ass can't get under here with the headsets in.
What's up? What's happening? Welcome in. Take Command Podcast. Logan Paulson there. Craig Hoffman here. Your mailbag questions in front of us here on a Mailbag Monday, Logan. Ready to dive in?
Yeah, ready to go, man. It's always fun to talk about football on a Monday.
Yeah, indeed. Also, are you back in, is this the first pod that you're doing since you're back from vacation, since you were in the Cape?
Oh, no, I think we done two.
Did we do one last week?
Yeah.
Okay.
We did. I mean, they're just ripping
every
by,
day
man.
Right now, middle of summer, every day, Blur's Day. Just
Blur's
no
Day.
idea. No, it is. I know it's a Monday and we're doing mailbag questions. So some of you probably listen to this on Tuesday. So what does it matter to us? All right, let's get started with the question from Alec. Alec mailed in. Again, you can submit questions, hoffmanshow.com or on Instagram at hoffman.sports. You can hit Logan too at Logan_Paulson82. Mailbag question. Following up on your discussion on how Kliff and Jayden can solve Vic Fangio's defense, Jayden seemed to have a lot of trouble solving the match defense in the passing game. What do they have to do to change that in 2025? Logan, I will tack on. Is that actually correct in the premise? Did they actually struggle, Kliff and Jayden, in the matchups against the Eagles and specifically Vic Fangio in 2024?
So I think that's a relevant question for sure, and like a relevant caveat. And so what I'd say is, like, if you look at the second matchup, I thought the Vic Fangio's defense played relatively well outside of 3 explosive plays. And so one of the things about Vic Fangio's defense is that they do a really good job when you go back and watch the film of like marrying the coverage to the rush. So for example, in that game, like you could tell like when they played their quarters, so kind of 4 across the back, Darius Slay had one. What's the other corner's name from Toledo?
Kenyon Mitchell.
Kenyon Mitchell. Like they were kind of putting a cap on it, right? Kind of saying the rush is going to get there before the ball is going to get out. And Jayden Daniels did a great job of anticipating a throw. Diami runs by Slay. Terry runs by Mitchell for a touchdown. There's a busted coverage to Zacchaeus that ends up being a big play for a touchdown. And that really is the game. And, Jayden Daniels converts a 3rd and long. So what I would say is that, like, the Philadelphia defense does a really good job of making it hard to find big plays. And I felt like last year, in terms of watching all of Philadelphia's defensive snaps, that game was kind of an anomaly as opposed to a rule. Like Jayden Daniels, Kliff Kingsbury found a way to break the matrix. Like, and one of the things Jayden Daniels does so well is he does the deep ball where he's putting a lot of air under the football, and like he can kind of beat the rush. He can beat the coverage because of how long when the ball gets in the air, how long it stays in the air, and how accurate it is. He can make some of those throws. So if I'm Vic Fangio, I go into that meeting on Monday after that second game and say, hey, like it sucks we got beat on this stuff, but like they're not going to be able to do this all the time. And I think that's basically how Vic Fangio operates all the time. So did Jayden have some success in that game? Yes. I think when you look at the playoff game, I think you see much more kind of Jayden Daniels' ability to process and be successful versus that group. So what I mean by that is I think when I had to do a breakdown for Command Center this week, and it's about Jayden. And so I watched that game again. And I was just really impressed, man, with how he handles pressure, how he handles space, how he kind of understood a little bit better. And I think Kliff called a better game. I think Kliff kind of gave him stuff that was a little bit easier to see. And so the thing about Vic's defense on first thing is it all kind of from the jump looks the same, right? So man kind of looks like quarters. Quarters could be cover 2. Quarters could easily be cover 3. And where the hook
and then
players
sometimes
are,
it's actually quarters.
Correct. And so where those hook players are in that coverage is really hard to discern. And so I think one of the things that I appreciated about the last game is that Jayden, I felt like, had a really good feel for when it was man and as opposed to just straight quarters, and then where the hook players were when it was quarters and when it was cover 3. Now, to tack on top of that, like people run match. Like, when we were here, Jack Del Rio ran a match defense and didn't play like Vic Fangio's defense. I think it's important to acknowledge that they have really, really, like Cooper DeJean, great underneath hook player, great man player. Zach Bond, great man player, great underneath hook player, right? And they can cover a lot of grass. So there's a bunch of throws in that second Philly game where it's like you can see the ball in the end zone angle cutting through, and then hands just millimeters off the ball, just kind of grazing it like a pair of scissors closing around it, and the ball gets the receiver. So I think they forced you last year. That defense forced you last year to walk this incredibly fine margin for error. Like if you think back to the first game that they played, Jayden Daniels is throwing this high cross. It's like the first third down of the game. Zach Bond does a great job baiting him to think that he's taking away the dig, and then runs with the high cross and is able to knock the ball down. And so that's a throw that Jayden's made a bunch over the course of the season. But in this game, because of the athlete, because of the understanding, because of the pressure of the Philadelphia defense, they're able to make a play. So did I think Jayden played well in the playoff game? Yes. Did I think he found a way to get explosive plays in the second game? Yes. Does this mean he has a problem with match coverage? No, because I think it's hard to overstate how good this match coverage from Philly was last year. They had the pass rush, they had the underneath hook players, they had the back end secondary players who get that done. It was really like a perfect storm of defense. And there's a reason we talk about it as an historic defense, right? We talk about them in the same breath as the Legion of Boom or the Baltimore Ravens from, what was that, 2001? 2000, yeah. Like, there's a reason they're in that conversation with the best defenses in NFL history, is because they were that good. And so to me, it's not a match problem. Like, Kliff doesn't have a match problem. He has a problem with when you're better top to bottom, when you've got some of the best personnel in the NFL, like, you're going to look smart. Plus, coupling that with great coaching from Vic Fangio, like, this is the result. And so I do think that they found good matchups. Like, you go back and watch that game, like getting the ball to Zach Ertz in the playoff game versus man coverage, understanding where hook guys are, yes. But the Jayden Daniels was writing a symphony, and it was getting them to 3rd and 5. You know what I mean? Like, That's how hard it was for them to be successful. And that's not Kliff, that's not Jayden. That's just a good football team over there. And I think that might be hard for fans to understand, is that it's schematically challenging, but they have the horses over there to run it. You know?
Like, if that's hard for you to understand, go pull up the Philadelphia Eagles schedule last year and see how many green W's there are versus red L's. Like, it wasn't a Commanders problem. It's a everybody problem. The common denominator is the Philadelphia Eagles. Like, y'all watched the Super Bowl, right? Y'all saw what they did to Patrick Mahomes, right? And Andy Reid, right? Like, this is an all-time defense that was clearly humming at that point in the season. And I think still that, like, Sean did a good job in the playoff game, but also, you know, that was a weird situation with the snow and everything. So the weather kind of affected what they wanted to do. That was probably the toughest test the Eagles had. Obviously, the NFC Championship game was closer than the final score. The turnovers were just so overwhelming in that game. And part of that is a credit to Philly. Like, they were as good at forcing turnovers as anybody has been in recent memory. So I think that, like what you said, I could say a lot of the same stuff again and eat up everyone's time, but I don't need to. The Eagles were great. Jayden destroyed other match coverages. I think the game plans got better as the season went for Kliff. So I guess what I would follow up with to get a more definitive answer to the specific question is, like, do you have a feel for what they did that was better? And maybe if we look at, for instance, what the Rams were able to do in the playoff game, or some of the other ways that I think of the Rams, especially because if we go back and some of, like, the really important shifts in football schematics over the last 10 years, Sean has been on the giving or receiving end of a lot of them. The way that, obviously, the zone run game, it's both them and Sean and what Kyle has done in San Francisco. But then as Fangio specifically figured out that McVay offense, and then Belichick copied a lot of it in that Super Bowl and held them to, 3 points. I think New England won that game 10-3. Like, what Sean did next to reopen the offense and ultimately win a Super Bowl with Matt Stafford. Like, that is a huge driver of a lot of the schematic choices offensive coaches are making. So when we look at the way Washington adapted, and we look at, like, for instance, what Sean has done against these match Fangio style, or specifically Vic Fangio defenses, what are the things that people should know?
Yeah, so I think the thing with the Vic Fangio defense and the Sean McVay comparison is that Sean's changed dramatically, like you just alluded to, right? So he went from like outside zone, play action, and there's still a lot of play action in the offense. But the thing I think that's most different about this team compared to teams that he's coached in the past is the offensive line. And people talk about Philadelphia's offensive line, how good they are. But when you look at the talent and the physicality of the Rams offensive line, it really
And the
is
size. They're effing huge.
they're huge. I think the average body weight of the players on the offensive line is 330. They're the biggest or the second biggest group. I don't remember which one exactly is the order, but they're definitely top two in terms of size of the guys in the NFL. And so what they do is they just kind of run right at you. So you think about the things that really were challenging for the Commanders and the matchups is like they didn't have, and we've talked about how much that we appreciate and how well we thought the offensive line here played last year for the Commanders. But one of the things they did is they're always kind of tricking you. You know what I'm saying? They're always kind of, hey, here's a pin pull. We're going to zone read it. We got an RPO off the backside. The thing that Philly does to negate that is they're crazy fast at the second level and they're crazy good on the defensive line. So they can run stuff down. They can play over top. They can play. Like, I remember watching the first game and being like, this is going to be a long day, when they had a screen, a bubble screen to the right off of a GT. So they're going to pull. So Washington pulls the right guard and the right tackle. So Wiley and Cosme to the offensive left. You read the unblocked defensive end. If he closes, the quarterback pulls it and then throws a little bubble screen. They've been great at that all year. But Cooper DeJean is the overhang hook player. He sees it, defeats the block, and then makes a tackle for a loss. That's speed, that's recognition, that's dexterity, and you force the quarterback into that bind where there's on the zone read, there's no right answer. Ideally, you'd want him to keep it, but Josh Sweat plays out of it. So you got to get the ball to the flat, and the guys on the perimeter can beat that and get to that ball. It was the speed of that group at the second level really is the difference maker. So if in a perfect world, all tools available to you say, well, I want to negate their speed, how do you do it? Just say, hey, let's run
them
downhill.
over.
Let's run duo. Let's run wham. Let's run trap. Let's get right up on these guys as fast as they can. Force them to fill holes. Get them out of a too high structure. I mean, this is old school football. On the last show we talked about kind of common sense football. You can't play a gap and a half when we're shoving the ball down your throat. So that's what LA did. And if you watch that game, it's like a bow. It reminds me of old Philly games where they kind of boa constrict you to death. It's like, here's 4, here's 5, here's 3, here's Stafford checking at the line of scrimmage, here's 15. Now we're going to do that again. And we're just going to methodically plod and plug the way down the field. And again, they had 2 turnovers in that game, if I remember correctly.
Kyron Williams had 2 fumbles. And Kyron Williams never fumbles, but it was in the snow and the ball got punched out twice.
Yeah, and so again, to me, that's the difference. They probably lose that game. And so, like, when you have a trump card like an offensive line, I think that offensive line in the second half of the year. So if you negate the first 5 games where everyone was hurt, kind of reprogram that for the last 12 plus playoffs, they're the number 1 graded offensive line in the NFL per EPA. So obviously, like, that's a really strong group of players. And when you've got a trump card like that and a quarterback that's seen everything and an offense that allows where your receivers are fullbacks essentially, like, and you can run the football like that, I can just lean on that. So all of a sudden, all the things they do well, the speed of the group, the ability to take away space, take underneath throwing lanes away, is now negated because they have to play downhill towards the line of scrimmage. And now all of the match stuff goes out the window because no longer can they win by playing a gap and a half. They have to play gapped out football. So huge credit to LA for how they did it. Because again, like, you look at Pittsburgh, they tried to play the same way and they couldn't do it. And so it really comes down to, everyone says it's players, not plays. I think in this instance, like, you see that very, very specifically.
Yeah, for sure. And I think when you look at Washington and go, okay, well, how does that apply to Washington? Oh, look. Hi, Laramie Tunsil. Welcome to town. Hey, Josh Connerly Jr. Welcome to town. Now our guards are bigger and faster and stronger, and our tackles bigger, faster, and stronger. And yeah, that's Nate Herbig. You're a big son of a gun. Maybe you'll play right guard until Sam Cosmi gets back. And if not, it's going to be Andrew Wiley, who is, plenty big for a guard, maybe a little undersized for a tackle, but like his, you take all that power that he has on the outside and put it on the inside, and he can move some folks. So that is, I think, or if you're Washington, you probably have a few more options this year. And obviously you add in the element of the running quarterback and your running game gets easier anyway, something the Rams very much don't have with 30-whatever-year-old Matt Stafford. And so that I think is encouraging for Washington moving forward.
No, I think that's 100% right. I can't wait to, and I think that's the reason you make these decisions. Is you say, how do teams have success against the Eagles? It's they can beat them in a multitude of ways. You've given yourself an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, and the Eagles aren't going to be as good this year, I don't think, because of personnel, but I'm not going to rely on that if I'm Washington, and Adam Peters certainly did not. Take Command Podcast Mailbag Edition. Greg Hoffman here, Logan Paulson there, and we got this one from Jamel. I'm going to do... You ever read like mailbag pieces, Logan, and it's like questions may have been, or interviews, and it's like questions and answers may have been edited for clarity. I'm going to clean up Jamel's question just a little bit because it was long and it was thorough and it was good. I don't want to read a 45-second question. Jamel says, I just rewatched the NFC Championship game and without emotions this time with a focus on the negative plays. Negative for him, he defined as a loss of yards, sacks, turnovers, wide open receiver, for the defense and immediate pressure. I was actually surprised that on 10 offensive drives, that the Commanders only really had 20-ish negative plays. That said, the Diami fumble, the McNichols fumble, the Eckler fumble, some of the sacks, all those, they had a huge impact, obviously. When the offense had the ball, they were effective against the Eagles in short field, yada, yada, yada. Get to the question. The question for Logan from Jamel here is that he wants to know what actually goes through the players' minds when costly turnovers happen, and how difficult is it for the players and team to emotionally get over them when playing in big games? And with that, does the size of the game matter when mistakes are made? Thanks, Jamel, for the question. Logan, I didn't play in the NFL, and plus this question was directed at you, so you're gonna have to answer this one.
Yeah, no, I think it depends on the game, depends on the moment. There's certain times, like offensively, where you're rolling and you feel really confident. You have a turnover in the red zone, and everyone's like, "We got it." Like, we're totally in control. I think some of the worst memories I have of being an offensive football player is when it's like, I specifically remember a game when I was in Atlanta in 2017, and we were playing the Baltimore Ravens, and we just could not get anything going. Like, we couldn't run the ball, we couldn't throw the ball, we couldn't pass protect. And so when you have a mistake, like when you give up a sack, it kind of feels like, you're pushing the boulder up the hill, and all of a sudden the boulder's starting to get a little momentum and roll back on you a little bit. And that can be a little bit overwhelming. And I've been a part of a couple games like that. Obviously I didn't play in this game, but the Monday Night Massacre, where we played the Eagles, and like, anything that they did just turned to gold immediately, and and everything you did offensively just was hard. Like, you couldn't get this going. The man reach was bad. The tackle for, and you're just in those games, any mistake feels huge. And so, I was very fortunate to be able to watch the game from the sideline, the Philadelphia game, and I could feel that kind of consternation from the team. And it's not because I don't think that they didn't have confidence, but it's when you're in a game against a team that is that good, as good as Philly, and you go and you have two fourth down conversions and you end up with a field goal, you kick off to them, their first offensive play is a 68-yard touchdown to Saquon Barkley. You're like, oh no, like, we have to play a perfect game in order to be in this thing. And sometimes that constriction of saying instead of being like, okay, we're good, like, we have to be good to win the game. Being perfect is a different kind of pressure. And I'm sure, Craig, you've experienced that. I'm sure a lot of people experience that. All of a sudden, when you kind of shift in your mind from saying, there's some wiggle room here, I can play my game, I can do what I need to do, to saying, I need to be perfect. Any mistake is going to cause a deviation. You get guys pressing, you get guys overreaching, you get guys out of position. And it can feel like you're in like that great, what's that? The replacements, like you're in quicksand, and everything you do is just pulling you down further and further. I think that's a really good depiction of how you feel in those moments. Yeah,
and this is why coaching is so hard, right? Like, if you're Dan Quinn, who's unbelievable at getting the message right, and I, if I'm being honest, don't remember kind of what he said during the week that week. Maybe you do. But like Dan, I felt like so often had the right messaging to the team, and the messaging to the team was the same as he put in the media. And like, he's very, very good, as you know, because you played for him. Like, you experienced this in Atlanta, of setting the tone for the week. But if you know it's going to take your best and you're trying to squeeze every last ounce out of your players, you could be like, hey guys, we got to be at our best all week. We got to do this. We got to do that. Execution's got to be at our top level. Like, this team is like, you want to explain how Herculean the task is to beat this team in this moment and earn a chance to go to the Super Bowl. You have to stress that it's going to be hard. But that's a double-edged sword, because if you make a mistake early or make two mistakes early, do your players feel defeated? Do they try too hard? Do they grip a little bit too tight? By the same token, it's like, hey guys, we just got to go play our game. Like, if we're us, we're going to be fine. They put on their pants the same way whatever, that version of the speech. And then your team doesn't come out sharp enough. They don't match the moment in terms of the urgency. Then you've messed up that way. So that's why this stuff is hard. The psychological side of sports is endlessly fascinating, because it inevitably intersects with the outcome. And if you can get the outcome and the message to matter, the belief you have is going to elevate your entire roster. If not, and you haven't built up the proper amount of resilience, and I don't think that the Commanders didn't have that, but you haven't built up the proper amount of resilience and adaptability, then your team's going to really struggle. I just think the Eagles were a better football team. Like, the Eagles, we just talked about it in the last segment. Like, they're one of the best football teams we've ever seen. They're great offensively, great defensively. Say what you want about Jalen Hurts, but he's a big game player who is awesome in big moments. Like, they were awesome. I don't think any messaging, any psychology, anything was going to make the Commanders beat the Eagles on that day. The Eagles were better. But it does explain, I think, and in answering the question in terms of like the mental side of it, why this stuff is so fraught, especially when the tension is ratcheted up, because often that tension matches the quality of your opponent that you're playing, which demands a higher level of execution.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that stuck out to me, just kind of from thinking about when I played and observing that game, it was just they had done a good job of playing really good complementary football up until that point. So, like, the offense didn't have to be perfect. Like, they were really good, against Tampa Bay and against Detroit, really, really good. But they always got some type of support from the defense, whether it's a well-timed 3 and out, or a fourth down stop or third down stop in the Tampa Bay game, or that fumble, that Bobby caused against Bucky Irving. Like, they just found moments in the interceptions against Goff, like. And then this game, it felt like, oh no, like, and it was so immediate. And I just remember thinking, like, it was so. And we just talked about how Jayden did such a good job on that drive of finding the open receivers, like not taking pressures, like tight window throws, and he literally was doing this, ballet balancing act to kind of get the ball down the field. And you're like, oh man, they've got a shot, and if they can stop the run, like, we'll be ready to go. And I think the team feels that. The team, they're smart guys, man. They're smart football minds. They intuitively know. And so all of a sudden, the thing that you have to do to stop Philadelphia is stop Saquon Barkley. Everyone knows they got to do it. The game plan all week that's been the talking point, right? And then the first play from scrimmage is that. Like, you better believe there's a psychological weight that is now placed upon you, and specifically the offense, because they say now we got to go out and be perfect. And that's where you see Diami over trying with the fumble, and some of those other fumbles I think are caused by guys just trying too hard, which is a crazy thing to say, but like, it's a thing. So
yeah, for sure. I mean, remember, this game was an 11-point game in the third quarter, and the Commanders had the ball. Like, they score a touchdown there, it's a 3-point game, and instead you have the final, like, kind of death knell, which was the Eckler fumble, and Philadelphia takes that 5 plays, 51-yard drive, and less than 3 minutes scores. It's 41-23, and the game is basically over. So it is the kind of thing that it felt like they gripped it a little too tight. Was there anything else that, as you were talking about those plays, that you wanted to talk about here with that game? Since it does seem we've gotten like 3 or 4 questions actually about this NFC Championship game. So is there's something else here that you wanted to chew on real quick before we move on?
Well, I think the thing that we had talked about briefly was, like, in the lead up to the question, I thought he was going to go a different direction with the question. I thought he was going to basically be talking about negative plays, and as a offense, as a play caller, like, how do you overcome them? Because I do think that that's a sweet science in and of itself. And I think one of the things about Kliff this last year that I thought he did a great job of is understanding when they had the utilization of 4 downs and how he would call a game. So, like, in 2nd and 10, like, they did a great job of getting to 3rd and 5. And then if they're in 3rd and 5, they did a great job of getting to 4th and 1. And I think, like, when you call a game like that, it gives you so much more flexibility. And there were elements of that in the Philly game, right? Because they go for it on 2 4th downs, they get the conversions, like, nice job. But I do think, like, when you're operating in an environment like that, a high stakes environment, negative plays, like, they really can't be tolerated. And I think when you look at one of the things that Jayden Daniels did such a fantastic job of last year was not taking a lot of negative plays, didn't turn the football over a ton, didn't take a lot of sacks. I mean, obviously the New Orleans game is an exception, but did a good job of kind of keeping the offense on schedule. And I think when you look at that and you say, like, what does that do for an offense? And I'm telling you, it does everything.
Well, and by the way, it does more. Sorry, I just had this thought. Like, it does more than for the offense. Think of all that long stretch where they didn't punt. What does that mean? Even if you're not scoring, what does that mean for the field position?
Yeah.
Like, you're just never given short fields.
It's so important. And that's one of the reasons we talk about sacks quite a bit, in terms of EPA per play and how they like kill offensive production. One of the reasons is just it makes it hard to get to a first down. And so like negative plays, like I always think of like sacks as like explosive plays for a defense, right? Even incomplete passes and like batted passes at the line of scrimmage, which would be categorized the same way, they can be devastating for an offense. You know what I mean? Like a drop pass, devastating, just because you lose it down, you lose an opportunity. So we go from a play, like I think about the Cowboys game that they lost at home, where like they're throwing a slant to Noah Brown. It's a good play by the defender, but Noah Brown usually makes that play. Ball comes out. It's 3rd and 6. They're not going to go for it. Or it's now 4th and 6 instead of 3rd and whatever, maybe first down. Like it just changes the paradigm. Every time there's a drop, incomplete pass, stack especially, and you mentioned the field position. I think that's so importantly critical to understand. And it's one of the things that I think Dan talked about with Kliff quite a bit, which I thought was really interesting, was like, how do you play complementary football? How do you balance this idea of saying like the offense is going to support the defense and vice versa? So I think that's where, again, like the negative play element, especially in a game like versus a team like Philly, is so huge. And again, it just kind of ratchets up the lack of margin for error.
Got a fun one to end. This is a fun one too. Double fun to end the podcast here on Take Command. Logan Paulson there, Craig Hoffman here. And this question came on Instagram, Logan, from John. Hey, Craig, always love the mailbag episodes of Take Command. I've got a question that is a semi-follow-up to Steven's self-described stupid question from a couple of episodes ago. Well, as soon as I read that, I almost didn't care what came next, Logan. I was like, this is going to be good. All right. Forgive me if you're watching this for reading like I'm an old man, but the font is not as big as I want it to be on the screen, and it won't let me make it bigger. So, why on offense, especially at the goal line and short yardage situations, do most teams pack all the linemen into tight spaces to just push forward rather than spreading the defense out with maybe 4 receivers and creating more space? So that way, the back or the quarterback has more potential space for running lanes than when everybody is compressed into a small area. I would love Logan's perspective on if he thinks that's just because football coaches have a tough guy mentality in those short yardage situations and they feel like they're trying to prove a point that our line is tougher than your line, or is there some strategic reason why you don't go spread and then just try to shoot a quick gap for a yard or two when needed? I guess it's kind of the anti-tush-push concept. Thanks, John.
Good question. I mean, it's a good philosophical question, like at its core, and I appreciate that. And so, what I'd say is, like, if you're a coach, high school, college, NFL, and stuff that was relayed to me when I was a player, is like that 4th and short when you're packed in advantages offense, especially in a home field situation, right? Because you start the play, you get the snap count, right? So, like, I should be able to gain enough momentum into my block, right, to overcome this defensive player at a standstill, right? And I think like that's true on its surface, right? That's true. The advantage is 100% real. Now, you got to look at your personnel. You got to make some of these decisions. And I do think you see a lot of teams kind of going the other way. They kind of spread guys out. They try to remove people from the boxes. They try to make the number counts a little bit simpler for the offensive line. But just remember, like, the number one most dangerous thing is the thing that teams are going to try to defend most acutely. And so what I mean by that is, like, even if you're spread out, there's going to be an extra dude in the box, right?
Right.
So you're gonna get in the gun. It's let's say it's 2nd and 1, right? You're gonna run the football. Like, you're gonna have probably a 6-man blocking surface. They're gonna have a 7-man run surface, and they're gonna be like, "We dare you, we dare." They're gonna be in man coverage.
Well, especially if it's forget 2nd and 1, make it 4th and 1. Like, go ahead, like, throw it when you need 1 yard.
And they're going to play inside leverage, man coverage. They're going to make you throw a fade, make you throw a tough ball, and say, yeah, go for it. Try to run the ball, right? And like that's the whole thing. It's like they're going to be in 0 man coverage. The free safety doesn't have any free safety responsibilities. He's playing downhill towards the football. They've got great press man answers on the perimeter. And so, to me, sometimes, because it's so challenging to run any other play down there in the red zone, 4th and 1, 4th and inches. Like even let's give you that. Like you got to be able to kind of run it in for a yard, right? Because the defense doesn't have a lot of other things to defend. Like there's not. And what I mean by that, before somebody in the comments gets at me, they don't have a lot of depth to the field to defend. So all of a sudden, the safeties, they're looking at the quarterback. They're at the line of scrimmage. And so I think that's one of the reasons why the Commanders were so effective in those situations, because they could run the ball in short yardage situations. So all of a sudden, the play action pass becomes really effective. Jayden Daniels gets to the perimeter. You get these great high lows of man defenders having to play Jayden, and then Jayden can throw over the top. I mean, they ran that play probably 4 times against the Atlanta Falcons in 4th and short, 3rd and short situations. So again, the packing you in gives you an advantage because it gives you space to the sidelines, right? Because all the defenders are in here. When I spread them out, now the grass is all covered. Now they have man responsibilities, but I think you got to think about the pros and cons of both. There are advantages and disadvantages to both, and it just really depends on what you want to major in as a play caller and as an offense. So like, there's no right answer. Like you can spread them out, that's totally fine, but know what they're going to do. You can pack them in, but know what they're going to do.
Yeah, I remember talking to a coach. I want to say it was Jay. So Jay Gruden, if I'm misquoting you, I apologize. But I feel like I remember talking to Jay about this at one point on some of the spread stuff. And his point was the reason you do it is if I can win 5 blocks, why would I try to need to win 8? And so if I've got 8 dudes on the line of scrimmage or 9 guys on the line of scrimmage, right, which leaves me with a quarterback and the running back to make 11, right? So let's go all 9 straight across. Every single one of those dudes kind of has to win their block. Versus if I can just spread it out and run the ball and I've got 5 dudes in the blocking surface, or add a tight end and I've got 6, and now they've got to take DBs and everybody out with it. Now I've got less blocks I have to win. The problem with that, like that's the upside of why you would do it, right? And depending on the defensive response, that is very, very solid logic. As you pointed out, though, the defense doesn't have to cooperate. Like they can have, let's say you go even 4 wide, right? So you got 4 wide, whether you got your guy in the gun or your quarterback under center, like pistol, whatever. But you got 5 dudes blocking and you have a slot and you have guys on the outside, your traditional 2x2 set. They don't have to have their nickel out over your guy. Like that nickel can be hanging in the box, and then a safety's probably hanging in the box on the other side, or they could do whatever. Like that now, all of a sudden, if they've got 7-on-5 or 6-on-5, we only have to win 5 blocks. Doesn't account for the fact that there's a free runner, and if that free runner's in the wrong gap for you, you're toast. And so that's the struggle, and the kind of I think encapsulates the push and the pull of more guys versus less guys. I know one thing, I'll shout out my guy, Michael Phillips here. He hates gun runs on 4th down. He's like, I don't care whether you spread, I don't care what you do, just do not run from the shotgun. Do you have strong feelings on that, the under center versus gun, specifically in short yardage?
I don't love, I'll give you a caveat. I don't love gun runs from normal tempo. If you're going to get in a gun run and we're kind of hurrying up to the line of scrimmage, I like that a little bit better because I think it gives you a slight advantage to let the back get downhill while they're not defensively really set. I prefer under center. And I think when you look at, like we just talked about the LA Rams, they're under center at one of the highest rates in the NFL. And it's because of some of this stuff. We talked about, a couple of weeks ago, like the advantage of being in the dot, being under center, and like getting that back downhill with good angles, getting the offensive line good angles, forcing that linebacker to track the back so he's not straight downhill like he would be in the gun. And I think there are advantages there. So to the original question, like I can run power smash mouth football from 4 wide receivers and 1 back. I can do that, right? Because they're going to match me and we're going to have to like win and crack safeties and do all that stuff. I can also do it from traditional, like, your 20 or 23 personnel, right? We got 2 backs, we got 3 tight ends, and we're going to go mash this thing in there. But one of the things I just would like to call attention to is that like play design here in this area is very, very important because you know exactly what coverage you're going to get. So one of the things I think it's important to acknowledge just how good Kliff was in this area. Like he did a great job of basically saying, we know you have to stop us for a yard. We know you have to sell it to stop the runner. Like, well, why don't we just boot it? You lose the boot when it's a spread a little bit. It's not quite as effective. And when you're booting, there's more bodies to the perimeter. Again, so like you got to think about, there's no right answer, right? Because I've seen a bunch of spread gun runs work. I've seen a bunch of under center spread stuff not work. I've seen a bunch of under center stuff work, powers, counter stuff in the red zone. It's also not worked, right? To me, it's just poor play design. Like the best dudes in those situations are good at subverting expectation. And we talk about that all the time on this show. It is the number one thing for offensive play callers. And you can almost feel it with Kliff, right? You can almost feel it when he runs one of those tricky little Jayden boots from under center, and then everybody's sucked in and the man players run up, and then Terry's wide open on the corner. And you're like, how did Terry McLaurin, a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL, just get so open? It's because he subverted expectation. He basically said, look at us, guys. We got this extra alignment in the game. What do you think's going to happen? We're going to run the ball. Psych, we're going to run this crazy play action. And so that's a good, well-designed play call, right? And so I think that's more what the question at its core is getting at, right? It's like, how do you win in those situations? And to me, it's like, what have you shown the defense? What is the defense expecting with your personnel? And everyone says, well, that just sounds like good offensive football. Yes, but it is heightened in those short yardage moments, right? Because you're going to get extremes. You're going to get, you're going to get 6 defensive linemen. You're going to get man coverage. You're going to get 0. You're going to get some type of pressure. You're going to get some type of line stunt. And so how do I manage that, right? Like if I'm Kliff and I know they bring an extra defensive lineman in, when I bring an extra offensive lineman in, I'm dictating to you so that I can now throw the football against a less pass efficient coverage. And so that's where I'd say, like, you want to spread them out? Like how many times we see last year where they ran like a draw with Jayden on like a 3rd and 1 or a 3rd and 2 that hit for a touchdown? I think they did twice against Tampa Bay early in the season. That's good ball, right? You spread them out. They think they got to defend the field. We hit up in the middle, and that's where.
Yeah. And by the way, I think it's worth pointing out they do have to defend the field, because if they don't, and they're just like, you're going to run a QB draw. Well, then you got dudes wide open, and Jayden's just like, quick check, get the ball, throw it out to someone who's being guarded by no one. So you have to respect. That's why you can do the subvert expectations thing, is because if the defense doesn't match what you throw out there, then they have given up the advantage or they've given you like something even easier than having to subvert the expectations. Yeah,
100%. And so I don't think, again, there's no right or wrong answer. I don't think it's a macho. Some coaches, it's a macho thing. Like, hey, we're the baddest dudes on the block. We're more physical than you. Let's go get it done. That's fine. But also, I think, like, if you want to win, more often than not, have well-designed plays that execute and subvert expectation. And I think that's the way to do it.
Yeah, and I think obviously that changes with your skill sets. Go back to the gun run question. Well, if it's Matthew Stafford and Kyron Williams, don't really love it. If it's Jayden Daniels and he is a threat to pull and run zone read, well, that changes the equation a little bit. What about just?
I got a great story about that.
Go ahead, and I'll ask my silly Madden-inspired follow-up.
So I forget which team this was or who I was even playing for, but we were an outside zone team. So if I was guessing, it's probably when I was here with Washington. That was who we were. We had small offensive linemen. We had fast offensive linemen. I remember we got down the goal line, and the offensive lineman and the offensive run game coordinator and the head coach were a little bit at odds. Like the head coach loved blast, which was like, ISO, downhill, man blocks, win the thing. And that was how he did it. That's how he called it. And so I remember the offensive line coach, like, because I'm in goal line, and he's like, get ready for 12 blast, but I'm gonna pump this play, which was our outside zone. It was like 18 force or something like that. And so we ran blast twice, and it sucked. We were just not physical enough to get it done. And then all of a sudden, 3rd and 1, we get the 18 force call in, and everyone gets their block, and we walk into the end zone. The running back's untouched, because we had built the team and built an offensive line that was better at perimeter runs. And I think, like, to your point, like it's quarterback specific, but it's also personnel specific. So if I'm LA, let's pack this sucker in there. Let's put the fight on our terms and say, we have one of the biggest, most physical offensive lines in football. Like, try to stop us, right? And you can't do it. If I'm the Cincinnati Bengals, I want Joe Burrow with the ball in his hands.
Right.
Let's spread him out and let him deal. So it's players, not plays, good offensive philosophy. There's no right way to skin a cat. And I think that's ultimately where I come down on this question.
What about just like running a play? Like, I mean, this is somewhat Madden, because like I can run stick on Madden, and that tight end is going to be open at 3 yards, like for 3 to 5 yards every single time. Like it's 3-step drop, bang. Like, unless the defensive end drops right underneath it, in which case I know where my second read is. But like literally 98% of the time, I can get that, which is why Madden, the Ask Madden feature, they recommend that not just down and like on the goal line on offense or like when you're about to score, but like if I'm backed up inside the 3, it's like, hey, do this because the ball gets out quickly and we can probably get positive yards. So like, do you ever or have you been around coaches that are just like, yeah, we have like a favorite play. Like we're really comfortable with CeeDee Lamb running a slant. Like we're just going to run our favorite play that has CeeDee on a slant. And like, as opposed to trying to create something specific for short yardage.
I think about Jordan Reed, like you just put him out there and his one of his best routes was like a quick slant. It was like isolation basketball. Like Jordan's over there by himself and then the other 2 tight ends are in here and the fullback's in there. And so it was 23 personnel. So your normal goal line thing, but Jordan's a receiver. And if you like the matchup and the guy's outside leverage, like throw the ball to the best receiving tight end in the last 10 years and you're going to win. And if you don't like the matchup and they're going to kind of shade to him, they're going to take people from the box, run the ball. And so that's what we did. And so that's not like great, short yardage philosophy, but it's like we have a guy that's better than most of the guys covering him.
I feel like that's what in Green Bay they did with Devontae for a long time too, where it's like Rodgers had the freedom to just be like, yeah, I'm going to throw the ball to Devontae. We're going to throw the fade or we're going to throw the slant, and that obviously works. All right. If that wasn't, that's not a stupid question. It's a fun philosophical question. This is a silly question, but it's an important one, Logan. This one comes from Omer on Instagram. Hey, Craig, big fan here. Questions for the mailbag. He asked me a Sonia Citron question, Washington Mystics adjacent.
Okay.
How good do I think Sonia Citron can be? Really good. Yes, I do think she could be a top 15 player very soon in the league. Like, she's going to make a lot of...
What position does he play?
So Sony plays, she's a guard, and she's made the All-Star team as a rookie this year. She's phenomenal. She was the number 3 pick in the draft, and she's going to be an all WNBA player very soon. But this is not that podcast. Here's the question for you, Logan. As someone who is starting my fitness journey and has long hair, this kind of sucks. When you were in the NFL, were you shampooing it and conditioning it every day? I go to the gym about 5 times a week, and I'm ready to buzz it all back off. Logan, we need hair care. For our guy Omer, from a dude who played with a very, very luscious head of hair when he was in the league.
Okay, a couple pointers here. So yeah, I had spent a lot of time with this actually, more time than I care to admit, but here I am admitting it on a show that people watch. So a couple things. One, don't wash it every day because you're going to get split ends. Make sure you condition at least every day. If your scalp starts to get itchy, remember it's because your skin is itchy. Just wash your scalp. The back end of the hair can stay unsoaped because you don't want to dry it out. So you know what I'm saying, Craig? Can you visualize that?
Yeah. So you're going to get, you use shampoo for that or are you using soap for that?
I'm using shampoo because it's better for the roots of the hair. Right. Just get it on the roots.
So just get in there. The base. I will say, my barber has like a little brush that he'll use sometimes. That's a treat. If they sell them, I just get yourself a little brush in there and, get a little bit of shampoo and then leave the ends like Logan's talking about. But if you don't want to use your fingers and you want that nice scalp massage feeling, get the brush.
We should get a sponsor for that.
Obviously.
So that's the one.
Also, if I remember this question was coming, I wouldn't have gotten a haircut 3 hours ago.
And then the other thing is like when you're lifting or working out, like I would always go like top knot, and people thought, oh, that's kind of silly, but it kept the hair from sweating on my neck, so I didn't have to wash it as well, right? Because it's like I'm keeping it dry, keeping it up, and people are like, oh, the ponytail, whatever. No, like that sucker was right on the top of my head.
You went full man bun.
Yeah, went full mad bun right on the top there, and then I didn't have to take. Because I took care of it in the workout, didn't have to take care of it as well post. But I condition pretty regularly. You're going to spend a lot of money on a conditioner. And then if your scalp is getting itchy or you feel like you need to wash your hair, wash the roots. And I'd probably only wash my hair maybe twice a week at the most. You know what I'm saying? Because it would just dry out real bad. So you want to avoid that at all costs.
Yeah, I mean, still like you're still running water through it, like you're trying to get the sweat off and everything.
Let's be clear.
Because otherwise you're gonna smell bad, and we're not trying to have we're not trying to have you at BO out here. It's just like a real thorough, wash situation.
The other thing I'd say too is like the conditioner usually will help with some of that fragrance smell.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. And if you're starting to get real oily, just give it a wash. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So there you go. So and plus, Logan, real expert on this. Like I sweat a lot too, and at times my hair is decently long. I actually legit walked into the barbershop today, and he's like, I think it's the longest I've ever seen it. I was like, I know. I thought I had made an appointment last week, and I apparently never hit book. So you're getting about an extra week here. but you also had to deal with a helmet, and that had to be
so.
rough.
I probably would not have washed it as much if I didn't have the helmet, just because again, you're dealing with some stuff going on in there. But yeah, like that.
Did you have to clean your helmet, or did the equipment staff take care of that?
The equipment. So in the NFL, man, they treat you like big babies, right? So they wash my pads every day. My pants are always dry. My helmet's always nice and washed down. Shout out to all the equipment guys over the course of my career. Like they did a great job, helped out a ton. But yeah, so I would say like take care of it in the workout. You know, some people like wear different hair care or whatever, but don't need to wash it as much as you think. And it doesn't, at least for me, it didn't smell real bad because you are rinsing it out. Do that every day, right? Yeah. And then definitely don't comb your hair while it's wet. Let it dry out a little bit.
Oh, there you go. There you go. And then you have her Pretty Boy Medias over here, where I'm like, whatever Trevor Sikkema does, because that guy's hair is immaculate. Got a little blow dry, a little product, and I was pretty lazy with it today. I felt very silly. My guy. Shout out to Steven at Bearded Goat. He got my hair looking so good, and then I went and worked out and ruined it. So, good job out of me. That concludes the Football and Hair Care podcast we call Take Command. Logan Paulson there, Craig Hoffman here. We appreciate you listening. We will do another show later in the week. If I'm being honest, I have no idea what we're doing. I won't be sitting here. I'll be in a hotel room in Los Angeles. So we'll figure out what we're doing.
Oh yeah, I forgot we could do something. Here we go.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this and you think your mailbag question is so good that it could be an entire show, holler at your boys. But we will come up with something. There's got a couple things floating around. Who knows? Maybe we'll get news. I think Terry's gonna sign this week. Why? Because I'm on vacation, and then I have to call into my own show.
We're gonna have Sam Fortier on here. Or is he still?
Yeah. Well, we were gonna try to do that, but we're gonna have. The whole point, or part of the point of doing that was we could do it quasi in person. Like Sam and I could be together in person because Sam loves to come over to my home studio. But if I'm in Los Angeles, then we can't do that. So
it's a fair point. We'll
have to figure out that. So 40A probably soon. Other stuff soon. Something on Thursday. That's why you subscribe, and then you'll find out then. For Logan, I'm Craig. Have a good one. I got a plane to catch. See y'all.